Today, I want to take a look at the Reflect Microsoft Teams extension and how we can use it for voting within meetings, channels, and chat groups. Here we're looking at the Microsoft App Templates page, and we have a description of the Reflect extension with a link over to GitHub and a preview of the screenshot. And here in the screenshot, what you can tell is there's a couple of different things. How do you feel about this week with a scale of 1 to 5? How do you feel about this week with the participants and the results? You can see there's a large distribution in the center, kind of a smaller one to the more negative feelings. So we have 5 choices and it maps into a results bar. And this does include a tally on the results, so it's kind of showing a running count. And these are 5 different buttons for doing input. So kind of a way to vote and then also calculate the score of the full group. If we come over to GitHub, we have the source code with an HTTPS address. We'll bring that over to command line and do git space clone, creating a new folder, and we'll go ahead and run our favorite command, code dot, which opens Visual Studio Code, followed by npm install to go download all of the dependencies. And from the home page of the Reflect app, we have a description, documentation, solution overview. We're going to go into the solution overview and just take a look at the diagram here that we have the Reflect app with a couple of different components. So on the left is the user interacting with Teams as a messaging extension. So that's the type of interface we have. And here we have some Azure resources, actually a couple of them. There's a bot service, there's a storage table, there's an insights function, a logic app. And Azure Active Directories, of course, is where we do our registration. So this is kind of where we register the app in Azure AD so that it can function and have an identity, a principal, a context. These other resources are part of an ARM template for Azure Resource Manager that helps us with the install deployment. But kind of getting a bird's eye view of the diagram lets us know what we're going to be working with. Over in the deployment guide, it goes through some of the details, and there's a bunch of different resources here where they mention insights and storage and bots and an app service plan and an Azure function. Number of different things that are working in the background. And over here are the steps that we go through for doing the registration. This is a part we're going to have to do manually, basically for security purposes, that we don't want this too automated. This needs to be an intentional choice that we're going to register a new app in the organization. Give it a name, give it some permissions, and go ahead and set things up. So I'll walk through that process next and switch screen. And now that we're looking at Azure Active Directory, we can come over here to the left under App Registrations, and we're going to add a new registration. We're going to select the multi-tenant option. And part of the reason for this is to support guest users, external users, any B2B, B2C sort of scenarios. We want to be flexible with who's included in our chat session if there are third parties. So we're going to select multi-tenant. And here we're going to give this a name. And we'll do all lowercase. And we'll call this Reflect Extension. Teams extension, Reflect Teams extension. And we're going to keep a couple of notes running over in Notepad. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as my very first item. And we'll be adding to it as we go. Reflect Teams extension. Cool. We can skip the URI and click register. And from the app registration screen, we're going to select the client ID. Click copy to clipboard, add that to our notepad we're collecting in the background. And on the left-hand side, we'll click secrets. And here we'll click on new client secret. We'll take the recommended 6 months, change that a little longer to 12 months. And we'll paste in the description, Reflect Teams extension, same that we're using for the app. That's going to create a secret. And we're going to copy the value of the secret into Notepad and keep our notes running. Back to the main screen, we're going to add a resource based on a template. From the creator resource, we'll type in template. And the one we want is the very first search result, that is template deployment using custom template. Go ahead and click that to open up, and we'll click Create to begin the wizard. So here we're going to select the Build Your Own in Template Editor with the pencil icon. That's going to invoke the editor. Looking back at the source code in VS Code, we have a deployment folder with a single ARM template JSON file. We're going to open that up, copy all of the content, and bring it over to paste into the browser. We know it pasted successfully because on the left-hand side, we can see the parsing and all the different artifacts. That we've got insights and app service, and we've got storage and all the different components that we're going to need, resource groups, bot service, all of the different components that we need to make the app run successfully. And after clicking Save, we're presented with the custom deployment wizard. This is going to have a few different settings input fields that are specific to the ARM template that we provided with the JSON, which outlines the different resources inside of Azure we're going to need, including a web app, a bot ID, and a bot client secret. Of course, we also have the I agree to terms. First things first, let's go ahead and put in a resource group. We're going to use our notepad that we were working with earlier, and we're going to follow the same pattern, and we're going to put a suffix on it. No spaces, all lowercase letters. I'll do the same name we were using before with -RG at the ending. And for web app, I'm going to put -WA. Add that to our notepad log. Keep on collecting notes. For the bot ID and secret, we're going to put the same thing in that we have for our Azure app registration, ID and secret. So following that same pattern. And we'll go ahead and click Purchase to move forward. And as we're monitoring deployment, you'll notice each of the resources comes back with a check mark or an in progress indicator. And the list gets longer as more resources have been deployed into Azure. So we'll monitor this screen until the total shows complete. With the resource deployment complete, we're going to go ahead and click on the Go to Resource group to check out the deployed resources. Here we have a number of different items. We've got App Insights, App Service Plan, Web App Bot, App Service Storage Account. This is the one we want, the Web App Bot. We're going to drill into that, find channels on the left-hand side, and use that for a connection to Microsoft Teams. In the center of the screen, we have Add a Featured Channel with Microsoft Teams. We'll go ahead and open that up. So here we're going to go with the default selection, which is Microsoft Teams Commercial, and we'll click the Save icon. We are prompted to accept both the publication terms and the privacy statement, hyperlinks to details for each. We'll click Agree to continue. All right, we get a green confirmation message that our settings are saved, and we are now available to connect into Teams. Next, we're going to switch over to VS Code, where we downloaded the clone of the project, and we're going to work on the manifest. And here we have a manifest JSON template, and we need to populate it with some of the data for the resources in Azure we just created. We're going to take our ID number, and we're going to place that in two locations, on lines 31 and on line 41 for the bot ID. Also at the top, we need an ID for the app itself. For this one, we can do a GUID generator and go out to the web and allow that to create a new GUID. And for line 5, we want to generate a new GUID, so we can switch out to our browser and generate GUIDs here with the online GUID generator. Bring that into our manifest, add it to line 5. Now to put this into Teams, we need a zip file that contains all three, the logo and both of the manifests. So here in our manifest folder, we have 3 files. We're going to take those, send to a compressed zip folder, and we'll go ahead and name that zip something a little more clear. Actually, I'll name it the same name as our Azure resources. reflect Teams extension. There we go.
You'll remember
Now for installing this to our tenant, we want to navigate to admin.teams.microsoft.com. That'll be our Teams admin center. And on the left rail, we want to expand Teams apps and click on Manage Apps. Now from here, it's pretty straightforward. We want to use the Upload button to go ahead and introduce something new for the tenant. And we select a file, and we'll go ahead and browse for the file from our earlier work. Okay, here we see our zip file available. We'll go ahead and do select a file. Excellent, and that is being uploaded to the tenant. We see a green indicator at the top that says added reflect to the list. Now that we have reflect in our Teams admin center, we can click on the line item just to confirm that it's all set up correctly. We see a status of published and allowed. And there's a couple of different things about the scope, that it can be personal, group chat, or a team. Has a little bit of detail about the permissions, any of the settings, pretty straightforward. So going back over to our Teams client, what we can do is click Apps over here in the bottom left. And we may need to log out and log back in to see this, because I don't see it available yet. Let me log out and log back. Okay, after logging back in, I now see Reflect as something that's available in this one specific tenant. And so copy link, update. Okay, we open up the screen. It has a little bit of detail about it, that we can add Reflect to a team. We can add it to a chat. We can add it to a meeting. There's a number of different use cases where we can implement. For this one, I'm going to say add to a team, and I'm going to select external test, which is a team that I have running on this tenant. And by adding that, we now see in our chat bar, let's zoom in here a little bit more. What can I do? Create a reflect. And there's this little icon with a heart over here. And this is the reflect extension. And so when we want to create a reflect, we can do this by kind of typing in the @mention for reflect. And it's a bot. And it comes with a little description. If we zoom in here on the search result, help people be more aware of their own emotional state during, and we can see it's a bot because of the hexagon icon here with the heart. And there's another way to invoke it here if you don't want to do the @mention to reflect. But there are a couple ways of invoking it. So we'll say create a reflect, and it pops up with a wizard. Where we want to set our parameters. Do we want to send it now or later? Does it repeat? Does it have any recurrence? Privacy. Do we want to show the names of others, or are we looking for more privacy? The question, how do you feel about today's project, has a scale of 1 to 5 with kind of happy and sad sort of faces. And there's a couple of other pre-filled questions. We'll look at these over here. How do you feel about today's project? How did the week go? How are you feeling more generally? How is your work-life balance? A couple of good questions. So say, how do you feel about today's project? Keep it public, no repeat, and there's our scale of different options. We'll put confirm, and that will go ahead and invoke the reflect. Hey, there we go. And now we can see our bot that came up in chat with a little icon. How do you feel about today's project? With a scale of 5. And then these are the responses from the users. So I'll go ahead and put a 5 on this one. Yep, there we go, 100% for my response. It does have the ability to edit, just in case you clicked on the wrong one. And it does show names, because this was put together as a public reflection. And here we even have our percentage composite and breakdown. So really cool way to get some feedback from your user community, from your coworkers. You could certainly customize the questions, customize the scale. I think the big thing is just the flexible nature of this, that it's woven into The message bar here, it gets its very own icon, making it really easy to locate and remember right there after, attaching files and doing animated GIFs or a stream. And, there's a couple different things we have, but being able to create your own messaging extension. That's how we customize this bar that comes with a live results panel and a more graphical way of voting. I think this is fantastic for user engagement and a lot of different use cases. You could put it into a group chat. You could have it as part of your team more generally. A lot of different ways of using it, even on scheduled meetings. Maybe you want to poll everybody once a week in a staff meeting. So that's an overview of the Microsoft Reflect messaging extension and how easy it is to create one using Azure, VS Code, and the Microsoft Teams extension framework. Thanks for watching.